So many layers to get to on UFC 286 and a lot of fights and a lot of close rounds. But all hail Leon Edwards, the still UFC welterweight champion. And we get so bogged down in scorecards and close fights and everything else. But I just have to say, watching that championship fight in 2023, I feel like these are the two best welterweights in the world, and Leon Edwards won that championship fight, whether 3-2, 4-1, point deduction, everything else. I felt like Leon Edwards largely controlled the dance, landed the more consequential shots, and leveled up 20 to 30% and probably needed every bit of it to beat the otherworldly Kamaru Usman.
John, that's exactly how I saw it. I can't say that I picked Leon Edwards with 100% confidence, but I was confident that he was going to come back a completely different fighter with a whole bunch of confidence heading into that fight. But, confidence is an interesting thing. They say it's difficult to attain, but easy to lose. And I think we saw that kind of contrast with Usman a little bit. I don't think he was affected. I don't think Kamaru was affected by the knockout per se, but I think as he was getting outstruck and perhaps out-grappled round by round, I think I saw an Usman that kind of was getting away from what he does best. I don't think he had as much confidence in his pacing and his ability to grind and pursue those takedowns and control Edwards on the ground. Edwards had done his homework. He was composed. He was ice cold throughout that fight. And man, was he clean. He was hitting some beautiful counters. And I think that took away the confidence of Kamaru Usman. But for me, there was the strike of the fight were the kicks of Edwards. Yeah. It slowed Usman down. Those leg kicks were absolutely brutal. He was smart to go to that well early in the fight. It slowed Usman down. It took away his confidence. And Usman was close in a lot of those rounds, but wasn't quite able to do what he wanted to do. I gave one round to Usman. I gave him round 3 with the point deduction. That would have been, of course, a 10-8. Yeah. But I had rounds 1, 2, 4, and 5 for Edwards pretty clearly. Just a fantastic and technical performance from Leon Edwards, who I think will go on to be much more appreciated as we see him more and more.
Yeah, I thought rounds 4 and 5 were exceedingly close. I really delayed in writing down a scorecard in round 4. And by the way, if you didn't see what I posted on social media on Monday morning, I did go back and watch the fight on mute. Muted myself, thank God. Didn't want to hear that again. But I wanted to watch it from that perspective because you can certainly trash my scorecard on the broadcast. And sometimes when I come here and talk to you, the scorecard matters. I do feel like if Usman was Caucasian, Kenny, you would have heard us really talking about the inside of his thigh and other parts of his leg because of discoloration. So I'm glad to hear you mention that. I don't know if you could speak to how hard it is to place a body kick, but like Leon didn't miss and he didn't hit the elbow and he didn't hit the shoulder. He just kept hitting the body and right on the belt line. And, I'm not saying he's the best striker in the welterweight division. Maybe he is, but certainly I feel like he's got to be the best kicker right now in the welterweight division.
Dude, he was an absolute sniper. Not a whole lot of wasted movement. Everything was taking great effect. And I think we saw that, the altitude did have an effect on Edwards in that second fight. And this time around, I think he was breathing normally the whole time. There were times where he slowed down a little bit in rounds 4 and 5, but still, everything he threw was with a purpose. Everything he did was with a purpose. I thought also what was brilliant about what he did was his cage wrestling, which is a spot where Kamaru Usman has dominated the competition time and time again. But what he did is, by being up against the cage and positioning your body in certain ways, you only allow for like 1 or 2 takedowns. And if you can control that wrist and stop Usman from getting those hands clasped, you can take away so many takedowns. And I thought Edwards did a better job of doing his homework and executing in that trilogy fight.
The wrist control was outstanding, and you got to have the strength and the positioning and everything else to do it. Obviously, there was the early glove grab, but I thought that wrist control was a big factor. Just the lateral movement of Leon Edwards again. And for me, I don't always have the keenest eye, but going back and watching on mute this morning, I think gave me a better appreciation of that, especially when you're watching to score and really trying to watch every strike. Gilbert Melendez said on the post-fight show that Kamaru Usman was hesitant, and you sort of alluded to that earlier. Do you feel like it's fair to say that he was hesitant?
Yeah, I think he was hesitant as they were fighting because I don't think it was something that he necessarily came in with, but I think Edwards was on point with his ability to take away the jab, slip that jab, slip some of the punches of Usman and counter. And I think it kept Usman off balance. And also there were times where we saw Kamaru Usman get his knees buckled a little bit on a few of those shots. There was a kick, there was a punch, there was a knee, and those are the shots that really stood out to me. I don't remember any shots necessarily. There was a good jab by Usman, but I didn't see that same kind of effect take hold of Edwards, like Edwards' shots were taking hold of Usman. Now, we can go back and say, listen, it's never good to get knocked out. And when a fighter does get knocked out, the very next fight, especially, rarely do we see them the same. You know, you do become more susceptible to knockouts as you get knocked out. And perhaps that father time and wear and tear is taking effect on Usman. But I think as Edwards was countering Usman, Usman started to lose that confidence.
Yeah, I thought he looked a little bit slower. And again, there was a lot of good in Kamaru Usman. I scored this fight a draw when I watched it back. I really did. But I do think I could have swung round 4 so very easily. And I did say on the broadcast, by the way, at the end of round 4, I didn't say big round for Kamaru Usman, but I did say, you know, I like his body language after what was a big round for him, because I did think he had moments. And I did feel like Leon Edwards, at least for the first half of that fourth round, if memory serves, didn't really do necessarily a whole lot. But largely, I did think this was Leon Edwards' fight, just the way I felt like it was Islam Makhachev's fight against Alexander Volkanovski, just in totality when those two fought. And I know people disagree with that. But I did have written down, Kenny, yes, there was one big jab from Usman, one big elbow from Kamaru Usman that I thought hurt Leon Edwards. But yeah, in some of those even close rounds, even if in round 2, maybe, if memory serves, there was a big Leon Edwards shot that I felt was too damaging to ignore based upon what I know of the criteria right now in 2023. Yeah. So congrats to Edwards. Usman's 35 years of age, and I don't know if Usman would have gone out of the sport depending on a different result here, Kenny, but he is one of the ultimate competitors. He is one of the all-time greats, and even if he isn't a prime Kamaru Usman anymore, and I shouldn't necessarily say that because many people believe he beat Leon Edwards on this night, but he don't want to go out like this, Kenny. So what are your thoughts before we get into all the Leon stuff on Kamaru Usman, totality of this performance, and the former champion moving forward?
Yeah, I think Usman, it was a close fight. To me, it really wasn't terribly close, but I thought it was clear for Edwards. But anyways, for Usman, I thought he came in, with the right mindset. He was saying the right things, it seemed to me. I thought he performed extremely well. I think the big thing, and it's something he's been dealing with for a very long time, is the health of his body, particularly his knees. And as you get older, you're going to have more injuries that are going to pile up. This isn't a guy who is coming to mixed martial arts fresh. He's been doing wrestling his whole life. That takes its toll on your body. Yeah. Usman, a very physical guy, but that can only take you so far. At a certain point, your body says, well, we're going to slow down a little bit. And I think we're starting to see that a bit. Can Usman still compete with the very best in the world? No question about it. If Colby Covington is to face Leon Edwards next, and somehow Edwards loses that fight to Covington, who do you think is going to get the next shot? It would be Usman. So I think Usman knows that very well. He could be a champion again in the very near future. I still think there's a lot of great fights for him. I would imagine that he can make a ton of money in this sport still. Yeah. Will always be one of the greatest welterweights of all time. There's still a lot of fantastic matchups for him at 170 or even at 185 pounds, John.